What's up, everybody? Last class, we talked about poly painting in general and the basics. And I wanted to give you guys the lecture that coincides along with that tutorial that we did. So, yeah, here it is. So, painting and texturing skin inside of ZBrush. So I wanted to just kind of give you an introduction to how the biology, I guess, of skin works, and then that should help inform what we did last class a little better, right? So the importance of understanding the properties of how sun affects, I mean, everything is pretty much evident at this point. And we're going to try to use PolyPaint, maybe some noise masks. We also I showed you guys how to use alphas, create kind of a base texture for a more, realistic looking skin, adding some pores and different things like that. And I want to touch more on the subsurface scattering aspect of it. Usually called SSS, it's subsurface scattering. It's how the skin reacts. Remember, I showed you the diagram of how, when you look at thin pieces of skin like the ear, maybe the webbing of the hands, things like that, how light can pass through it, right? We talked about the properties of light and how, sometimes the light will pass through the medium. Some of the light will bounce back depending on the surface. If it's a shiny surface, if it's a surface from air to water, right? How, depending on what the light does, it might go in a little bit, refract, bounce around the object, right? And, if it's a case like the thin piece of the ear, some of that light will start to show through, giving it kind of like a glow effect. So that's the subsurface scattering. So let's talk about the layers of the human skin. All right. So the first thing we have is going to be this outer layer we're going to start from top to bottom, right? We've got the outer layer, which is responsible for most of the color that you're going to see on the skin, right? Then you've got the dermis layer, which contains collagen and things like that give our that's the thing that makes our skin firm if we're young, and a lack of collagen will make your skin kind of saggy. And the older you get, the more collagen you lose. Hence, you see a lot of commercials based on like, hey, anti-aging or collagen injections and things like that bring some of that. And it's just these little pieces that add structure to the underlayer of the skin. Then we have our hypodermis, which is the deepest layer of the skin, composed of fat and connective tissue. All right, so you might have some people call it subcutaneous fat, subcutaneous tissue, which is this bottom layer here. So the sun definitely affects the way you see skin, right? Depending on how penetrating the sun might be, you might see maybe even veins showing on the skin. You might get some freckles causing, pigmentation of the skin, freckles, tan, sunburns, things like that. So the sun will damage the skin, right? This outer layer all the way in a little bit right here. So UV damage leads to wrinkles and the texture variation. Blood flow creates natural warmth in the skin tone as well. So when light penetrates the skin and scatters before reflecting outward, right? And it's essential for achieving that soft, realistic skin, and visible in areas like fingertips, ears, and lips. So we talked about that a little bit in the introduction, where you will get some of this when the light is pushing through, right? Because light the light has the property of it's going in a straight line, and until it meets some sort of resistance, right? This resistance could be water, the resistance could be skin, right? It could be a shiny surface. Now, how does that light react to that surface? Will it bounce off? Will it get absorbed, right? When it gets absorbed, right, you'll get like a warm sensation, right? If it penetrates and goes through, you will still get a warm sensation, but when it's absorbed, it'll come out the other side and you'll be able to see it on the other side of the hand, right? So that's pretty much it. So when you set up your PolyPaint in ZBrush, we talked about this last class, you want to fill the color, right? Use a spray brush on the low intensity for color variation, which I showed you guys how to do that. And you can add cooler tones, blues, purples in the shadows, and then the warm tones, reds, oranges on the highlights. And we went through that entire process inside of ZBrush. So I will link to that tutorial as well. So then introduce subtle variations like veins, freckles, and rosy hues. We didn't do that, but these are also part of the things that you can do. And then we wanted to introduce applying noises and applying alphas to our model. So you can navigate to the surface, add noise, use a Perlin noise, adjust the strength and scales for very, very fine pores, and then convert the noise into a mask by noise, and then inflate to add more detail to different parts. And I talked about how you can add detail using the Z add function or Z sub plus your RGB or mRGB, right, which will allow you to either paint the material or just paint the color information, right? And then I showed you guys how to use drag select to add more pores using some of those Perlin noises, some of those noises that come standard. And I did say, hey, when you're doing this for real in the real world, what you're going to want to do is find like a skin pack, make your own alphas, right? And those will definitely help you layer the wrinkles, the pores, and key areas like the forehead. Because I told you, every piece of real estate, every piece of skin has its own kind of pores, right? People with beards, the pores on their faces is going to be a little bigger because these are thicker, coarser hairs, and then sometimes you'll get thinner or smaller pores throughout the rest of the face. And utilizing the cavity mask to refine some of these areas. All right, so when you want to activate your subsurface scattering, you want to go into your BPR settings, right? Adjust the radius for light penetration, increase the strength of the realistic translucency, modify the material in wax modifier for extra softness. Then you can blend the skin tones using smooth with RGB mode, use the BPR render view for subsurface scattering, and export the external render engines like KeyShot to enhance that subsurface scattering. So that's pretty much it for the lecture. I didn't think it required me to do it with you guys or give make this a whole lecture class. It wasn't going to be a long lecture. So your assignment is to go and try this out. Add subsurface scattering to your models. If you've already started your PolyPaint exercise, go in right now, add some more variation to the tone. I've seen some of the stuff you guys are doing, and it's looking pretty good. But I think some of you guys can still use a little bit more tonality, right? Think about the shadows, the parts where there's crevices, right? Those parts will be more in shadow, right? Dimples, the ridge of the cheekbones, right? Things like that where you'll get more shadow in your model. So I appreciate you guys for watching this. This isn't a too long a video, hopefully, for you guys. I will see you guys on Thursday. I will also be in the chat if you guys have any questions about what you're doing or how you need to do it. So feel free to reach out to me on Discord or via email, and I will see you guys on Thursday. All right. Have a good rest of your day. Happy sculpting.